it just came. In fact, there was a point where in my head I had it going this way, and all of a sudden something else came on the page. It's like, oh, is that what's going to happen? Oh my God. And and I can't take, well, though it came through me, it's like stepping back and allowing the muse to just work its magic.
Hello, Faye. Thank you for coming.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I'm very excited to get into this. I have your book here, Inside Outside.
Yay.
I have
Yay.
read the book, really enjoyed it. So I'm very
Oh, good.
excited to get into this. But for those who haven't had the chance to read the book or don't know about it, let's start with our 2-minute pitch.
Inside Outside is what we call a domestic psychological suspense. So, with this particular story, what happens is we start with Leslie, she's a broken woman. She has had a heck of a ride so far. She's in her 30s and she's a writer, and the book starts in a grocery store where she sees her ex-husband. And instead of just going with the flow, she hides. And I don't know about you, Mark, but I know I've done that. I'm walking through Walmart and it's like, oh my God, I don't want to talk to that person,
Yeah.
I got no makeup on, it's like, ah. So, you dive behind the pillar in the store, and you sneak your way out. So she's a real person, and I think we can all relate to her. And what she does is she likes to sit at her window and watch a little park across the street. And in that park is the pickup for the local high school, the bus pickup. So the bus stops there every morning. And on this one morning, she sees a young girl who reminds her so much of herself that she gets a little obsessed, shall we say. So that's it in a nutshell. It's the story of her inserting herself into this young girl's life, and how these two people's stories parallel each other and yet are so divergent. They heal each other even though they're both so broken. Now, it's under the thriller genre, but leans more towards our own backyards, if that makes any sense. Very
Yeah.
often we'll read thrillers, and there'll be something so big, and there'll be guns and mystery and chases and things like that. So, but domestic thrillers are something that can happen in your own backyard. And that's what this story is about. And we don't know what happens behind closed doors ever. Doesn't make any difference who it is. Like, there is an inside person and there's an outside person. Every time we go in and out of our door, we change our persona. And which one is the real one? And do you really want the world seeing what that inside persona is? Because it can be a little sick and twisted without even realizing it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you brought up domestic thrillers and explained that, because I used to also think that every thriller labeled thriller was high action, like high octane, high stakes. So now that I read even more thrillers from broad subgenres, I guess you could say, yeah, it really helps to have an understanding of. There's lots of types of thrillers, that it's not just spy or crime thrillers. There's lots of really good books out there. So thanks for mentioning that.
Oh, you're welcome. And what kind of gets me though is when people hear the word domestic, they think domestic violence. Domestic thrillers are not about domestic violence. Domestic thrillers are stories that can happen in your own world. It could be your own school, it could be at work, in your church, wherever. But it's not about violence. It's usually more psychologically based as we explore all of those feelings and tensions and things that come up every single day.
Yeah. So what inspired this story?
What inspired this story? To tell you the truth, This story fell out of the end of my fingers on the keyboard. There was no I did not set out to say, okay, I am going to write a domestic thriller today. It just the story itself actually just kind of fell out. If I look back on things that I've read, Girl on a Train, I think was probably an inspiration, simply because that was one of the first domestic thrillers that came out that discussed this whole thing of kind of like distant observation, the watching of the things that go on around us and how they affect us without us even realizing it. And in that particular book, it started with, she was a girl on a train and she saw an incident happen and she acted on it. So that would probably be a jumping off point for my inspiration. But as I got further into the story and into the characters, it definitely took on a life of its own.
So would you say you're sort of like a pantser? I guess I think Stephen King coined the term pantser, where you just sat down and just started typing story, and then everything came to life, and you went from there.
Yeah, yeah. For any writer that doesn't know, you've got a pantser and a plotter. And so a plotter is somebody who, you know, drafts every little chapter, every little scene. I can't do that. I need to be more organic in my writing. And so I have a very good idea in my head as to who the characters are, and I let the characters lead me. And so I kind of fly by the seat of my pants. But it's almost cathartic because these characters like Leslie and Selena, they live in my head. They talk to me at night. We'll be driving. I'll be driving. They're not allowed to drive. So I'll be driving and, they're chattering away. So these particular characters lived a long time prior to reaching the page.
Okay. And was there
If that-
was there a
Sorry, I was
moment
just
in
going
your
to say,
life
if that makes sense. Was there a moment in my life?
that influenced the writing of the story? As you wrote, was there a moment where you thought this kind of paralleled experiences you have like for the character or the plot?
That's an interesting question. Thanks for that. I think what I need would my background is criminal justice. So for several years after I have a degree in criminology, I entered into the correction system of Canada as an officer. So there I was, 22 years old, slinging a AR-15 on my back. It's
Wow.
like I can now look back and see why my parents were a little bit concerned.
Yeah,
It was like,
I
yeah, but
agree.
I got this. And then, that led me into investigations and into a lot of different positions where there was a lot of discussion and a lot of awareness of, for example, family violence, and which Leslie does experience. So, as far as inspiration or personal, I think any author who writes a book and puts words on pages puts a piece of themselves on the page every single time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where I can't pinpoint like a particular instance that this happened to me, so this is what I wrote, it's not. It's all intertwined with just who I am,
Okay.
which
That's
is a little sick and twisted, yes.
awesome. Yeah. So did you have to do research for this story?
I didn't do any research for this story. That's not true. There was a few things there's a scene that takes place in a hospital, and there was some research done there, and I talked to a medical professional um, to make sure that I was on track with where I was taking that story, and if just to make sure that it was plausible, right?
Mm.
Uh, but other than that, it's just experience, observation. Yeah, it's that little muse that sits on my shoulder saying, "Write this, write this."
So I know pantsers are I won't generalize necessarily, but to say like I have talked to pantsers, I'm a kind of in between myself, but who write until they kind of run out of inspiration. It's kind of like because they don't know where the story's going, so they just write their way into a corner and they don't know how to get out, kind of thing. Did you have any of those moments where in the story you were writing and you were like, I don't know where this is going, and you had to readjust?
In this particular, I have had that experience for sure, but in this particular experience of writing this book, it just came. In fact, there was a point where in my head I had it going this way, and all of a sudden something else came on the page. It's like, oh, is that what's going to happen? Oh my God! And and I can't take, well, though it came through me. It's like stepping back and allowing the muse to just work its magic. It's really quite incredible to have that happen. Now, on the other hand, I have painted myself into a corner, and I know in one situation I got to about 40,000 words, and I thought, oh my God, this is like, like where in the world am I going with this? And I ended up tossing it. And I have started now in my old age, I guess, putting together some loose outlines.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
And it helps or not.
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? Because the characters
It,
do what they're going to do.
they take on a life of their own. They really
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
I've done both. Pantsing didn't work very well for me. That's why I'm kind of in between. But I've done the outline where I worked and worked and worked, and then a couple hundred pages into writing the story, everything just went out the window because it was like, no, these people are going to do something completely different, and this is where I have to go because that's where they wanted me to go, essentially.
And that's what we have to remember is these characters are the ones that are in charge. And because I deal with domestic suspense or domestic situations and setting, those characters are the strengths that push the story forward. So I just got back from New York. I was at Thriller Fest, which is a huge beast of a festival. I mean, it was fantastic. There was 1,000 people, and one of the keynote speakers was James Patterson. James Patterson has probably written 50 million books, and but he is a deep, exacting plotter. Like he will take a chapter and break down every little thing, every little word, and plot it out. So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah.
I couldn't do
Yeah.
that.
That must have been very cool to be in the room now.
It was very cool to be in. Grisham was there too, so
Oh, nice.
it was quite the event. But I think every writer is individual, and I think they grow in their craft as to which way they're going to go, and whether it be pantsing or plotting, it doesn't matter, or a hybrid of both, and you have to do what works for you, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that stuck with me in this book was I felt for Leslie throughout this book because I connected with her. And I'm curious if when you're writing a character, are you looking for these moments of connection, like to establish connection? I know you're saying you're pantsing, so it's kind of just coming off, but do you notice like, oh, that's a great moment where I know people will connect with this personality?
For myself, there's no real conscious thought because I'm just presenting a character, and she is who she is. And, she's very flawed. She's very, very sympathetic character as well, as we learn as we go along. Yeah, that's such an interesting question, Mark, because I don't really sit and think about it as far as connection. I think I always have a question in the back of my mind as to whether this particular character is likable. Like, because sometimes it can be very hard to connect with someone that is really nasty. but she's not nasty. She's got her moments, but yeah, sorry, that doesn't really answer your question, but it's she just presented herself as who she was. Take
Yeah.
it or leave it.
Hey, that works. Yeah.
That was who she is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I took it. Yeah. It was, it was
Where
good.
did
Yeah.
how did you connect with it? What on what level or where?
It was almost right from the get go. It was like the trauma that she had been through. And even though I wouldn't have reacted in the way that she did with how she behaved necessarily in her responses to it, I could feel for like what she was going through and what it felt like for like the betrayal of that relationship that she was in and like all
Right.
those struggles that she went through. So immediately I was like, yeah, I know anything could happen at that point because I know what that feels like. So that's where I really connected with her. Yeah.
That's so
And it
that
kept me through.
that makes me happy. See, it makes me happy. You were so traumatized. Yeah, no. No, that's great to hear because that's I guess as a writer, I think we set out with our characters to connect without even realizing it.
Mhm.
Because I think we are as just as human beings very connected in so many ways that we don't even really consider.
Yeah. And do you have a character that was the favorite to write? Did you have one that you were writing and just loved this personality?
Mama.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a yeah, it's a she wasn't my favorite, but she was kind of fun to write because she was so evil and such a bitch.
yeah.
And I have no idea where that came from. I don't know anybody like that. Um and it's interesting that this whole character persona emerged. I don't know where she came from. So yeah, it was interesting. But
Yeah. She was a
there were a
character.
couple. She was a character for sure. But I did both of the main characters, Selena and Leslie, were a part of my heart, and they were both strong and independent in their own way, and became even more so, I hope.
Yeah. Was there anything you cut from the book? Any scenes or anything that you had to cut out that maybe you wish you had put back
Oh,
in there?
not that I wish that I had put back in. No, there was nothing. I mean, there was obviously edits. There was huge hunks that I take out when I edit. What I do is I have a separate file called Dead Darlings, and so I put all of my work there just in case I want to get it back. Those like all of those words that we write that end up on the floor. I like to have them in a nice little file, but those particular cuts, I think make the story tighter. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to get into the final wrap up here. A couple of other questions. What advice would you give someone who had just published their first or maybe second book?
And what kind of publishing are we talking?
Either. Let's say, yeah, I can say either.
Okay,
Indie
so
or traditional.
when you publish that first book, after you publish that first book, you need to make a decision. The writer, author, creator needs to make a decision as to whether it is a passion and something that you're going to continue, or is this just a hobby? Because what happens is after you publish that first book, it is now a business. And the author's mindset needs to change. And it needs to, if you want any semblance of success, it is a lot of work. So
Yes.
I with Inside Outside, I went through two different agents. So I had an agent pick it up pretty much right away, soon as I put it out into the world. And it was just before COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, yay. Right. And then the agent would come back and say, well, I want this changed. I want that changed. And then, there's a saying, and it says, no agent is better than the wrong agent. And she was not the right fit for me. So we parted ways, and then I went with another agency, and they ended up going out of business. And so it was like, like, is the writing on the wall here? Is somebody trying to tell me something? What's going on? So I got a publisher, and I decided to go with a small indie press. And it was a bit of a challenge because that particular publisher, one of the things he said to me was, don't worry about your cover, because you're only going to sell 30 or 40 copies, and the cover doesn't matter. And
Wow.
I was like, what? Like,
Wow.
I like this is my cover.
Yeah,
Like, that's a powerful cover.
for sure.
And I've had many, many compliments on it. And so anyway, so I left that publisher and decided to go on my own and self-publish. But when you do self-publish, it is a lot of, you are your own marketer, you are your own everything. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it though. I already have I have a blog called My Twisted Writer Brain that's been going for years, and that afforded me a platform. So that was good. And I also ran a festival for 5 years. So that also allowed me a platform. So advice, know what you're getting yourself into. Nobody's going to come bang down your door.
Yeah.
And if you're serious about moving forward with the business, get that second book written and published.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that
You're
advice.
welcome.
Yeah.
You're
Decide if
welcome.
you're going to be a hobbyist or a business, because this is the moment you want to make money off this business, you have to become a business.
You have to become a business, exactly. Yeah. And you have to switch that mindset a little bit. So yeah.
So where can people find your book?
My book is in Amazon, and both right now it's just print and ebook. Hope to get the audiobook out soon. And you can request it at the library. You can also request it through Indigo and through the Okanagan, which is where I live in central BC, South Central. It's in most libraries here. So yeah. And go to my webpage, FayArcand.com. Easy as that. You can just get it right from there.
Awesome. I'll link that in the show notes for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule.
I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about the book, talk about domestic thrillers or psychological. I will say that I've won a couple of awards already for this book, and one of them, it was quite interesting because what they did, I had entered in a suspense category, I think, and the people who ran the contest wanted the book to be number one. So what they did was they moved it into a different category because there was already somebody in suspense that they had chosen, and the category that it won in, which I found interesting, was mental health and fiction mental health. And it was like, wow, like I felt,
for sure. Yeah.
I felt like the writer really got it, or not the writer, the reader, whoever read it for this particular contest or the event really understood Leslie for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So if you don't mind sticking around after the show, we got a couple of questions for our newsletter subscribers, a couple of questions that only they get when they subscribe.
Okay. The secret stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much.